Let me ask you a question. Let's say, for instance, you own a med spa and you have more than one laser system. How do you make sure that laser system A is putting out exactly the same thing as laser system B? Because as you can probably see, if they're not, you could run into some problemos. So we look to what's called calibration. So you probably are familiar with the idea that when you start your laser systems up in the morning or you're about ready to go into treatment, you take this thing called a laser aperture and you put it into some type of calibration port, right? And then you start doing a test function. The laser system is going to detect what it's actually putting out and make sure what it's putting out here agrees with your settings here. Basic concept, overly simplified, but that's the idea. But it doesn't answer the question, how does one system equal the other? To do that, we need to do an independent external calibration verification. And this is where once a year, you're going to have a technician come out with an external calibration meter. Now, it's important to understand when this calibration meter was also last checked. It should be within 18 months, a year and a half, and that will allow you to have what's called traceability. So that is to say, you need a written record as to when your system was externally checked or verified and when this was externally checked or verified to really ensure that this is correct. So far, so good? Right. So what you end up doing is we will test the output of the laser system against this external meter. And then we will make the proper adjustments with our software system, ensuring that this is more or less a plus or minus just a few percentage of what this is saying that you have. And so we're making sure that the verification is correct and that this system is actually putting out the energy that we think it's putting out. And then we're going to do the same thing on your next laser system and then your next laser system. And that's the only way to ensure that all systems within your clinic are actually uniform. Imagine for a second that it's not. And we've seen this because we've done a lot of training over the last 12, 14 years at clinics where they have multiple locations within the same city, certainly 4 or 5 laser systems with the same practice. And what ends up happening is that one system gets serviced by a technician and this is performed and the verification is correct, but the next system gets performed, or the next system when going into service many months later is perhaps serviced from a different technician or a different external power meter. And as a consequence, one system might be right on and the other system might be up or down as much as 20%, which is incidentally what the FDA actually allows. A little bit scary because that's a huge degree of difference, right? So with that being said, it's really important that on a consistent basis, every single one of the systems across all of your locations and within your own location itself is performed with the same meter. I'm getting wordy as hell. Blah, blah, blah. You're going to cut all that out.
It's okay because it's a long video for YouTube.
Yeah, who cares, right? Yeah. So that's why it's so important to really ensure that every single system across all your locations and of course within your same location is verified externally, because otherwise you can imagine it leads to some really poor outcomes for your clinicians and of course clients, right? Your clinicians are going to feel as if one laser system's hot and the other system might be cold or weak. And then of course clients, if treated on the hot system, might incidentally get a hot type of complication, otherwise known as a burn, right? So it's really important for safety and efficacy considerations to make sure that these things are all uniform. And sometimes, particularly as a clinic owner, you have to understand and respect the idea that your clinicians might not realize that this is exactly what's going on behind the scenes, right? They don't perhaps really truly understand the importance of making sure that each system is calibrated uniformly throughout all of your locations with an external meter. Perhaps most clinic owners, and the reason for this video is to make sure that folks understand the importance and how imperative this is to do to ensure safety and efficacy across your laser systems. But when done so, I think you're going to find that your clinic will operate a lot better. Your clinicians will really start to appreciate that laser systems are actually uniform, that they receive a predictable and similar outcome with each and every single one of their treatments. Without that type of predictability, they're going to start to second guess themselves. And that's the last thing that you want them to do when they're in the treatment room with the laser system before providing a procedure to one of your clients. So again, very important. External meter, at least once every 12 months, everything needs to be verified, plus or minus usually just 1 or 2% to their meter. And then that's the only way to make sure that you get that consistent and safe and effective treatment outcome across all those laser systems and perhaps even across multiple locations.